a couple of grains of that can kill you. So there's problems in the veterinary clinic, just passing down to people who are substance abusers. Then back in February, we had Walk the Talk Addiction Recovery with Michael Gendry, PhD. He came and talked about the importance of family and community involvement in substance abuse. He gave a wonderful presentation. He's also a doctor of philosophy and ethics professor at which college is he at, Dr. Fisher?
Middlesex College.
Middlesex College. Okay, and then in March we had Maine Moms United Call to Action. We had we had a brunch for Maine mothers who were interested in the substance abuse problems in our communities, and it was well attended. And then in April, the end of April, my sister and my two great nieces came and they spoke about, it was in memory of my niece Charmaine, who had severe endometriosis and ultimately died of an overdose of drugs because the doctors did not monitor her properly. Her daughter became sick with endometriosis, and she was also not monitored, and she ended up with a drug problem and ended up calling her grandmother, telling her, please, I need help, I don't want to die like my mother. So they got her into a rehab center in Florida, and she's clean now, but she gave a tremendous presentation. And we have it on videotape. If anybody's interested, we can get it to you. And then, let's see, what else did we do? Oh, yeah, that was called Don't Cry in Silence When the Sun Is Gone. And then in May, we had Hal came and spoke on the United States Constitution and an exceptional example of American exceptionalism. That was went very well attended. And then in May we had a man who was very interesting. He came, his name is Chip Fisher, and he had a cranial device called a cranial stimulator, which is good for substance abuse, for chronic pain. It's patented. People who are on Maine, what is it? Not Medicaid, but anyway, well, yeah, Maine Care can get these devices free, but it really is supposed to help with sleep problems, with, as we said, with chronic pain, substance abuse. And actually, we have a couple that can be used if anybody would like to try them. We've got a couple of them in the library. And then in June, what did we do? Oh, in June we went up to Augusta and we met with Governor Page's assistants to tell him about all the work we have been doing in Waldoboro to deal with informing people and educating people about substance abuse. And then in June we had a German-American Day honoring the Germans in the town of Waldoboro because the population of Waldoboro is 20% German. It was settled by German people, and we had all German food. Everybody had a great time. The Humes kids came. They even sang us a song in German, and it was a wonderful and well-attended event. And then we had a town hall meeting in July, and we just discussed what we did the past year and what we want to do moving forward. So we've been pretty busy the last year. Well, actually, not even the last year, since January. Dr. Shore opened the office last August, and we really didn't get underway until January. So anyway, that's kind of a rundown of what we've done. And hopefully we can move forward and have all kinds of events here. And yeah.
Jeannette, can I say one thing?
Uh-huh.
Also, when you're talking about the vets and going to get those, the narcotics for your pets,
Yeah.
that's now reported to the state. I know when I took my animal to the vet,
Yeah.
that they're mandated to report that to the state that you have that drug in your house.
Now you can, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as of,
Wow.
yeah, as of February.
So then you could be, they could be watching you for
Yeah.
a drug problem
Yeah.
or deal or something.
Yeah.
So, wow, that
pretty
was
scary.
shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Mel, we'd like you to do an invocation. Would you be willing to say a prayer for us?
I'll try.
If not,
All I can do is try.
okay.
And I have a few words I'd like to say after the invitation. We all bow our heads. Oh Lord, thank us for this day. Thanks for allowing us to all be here, meet together. In Jesus' name, we will honor you. Amen.
Any comments?
Okay.
Comments now?
Yeah, my comment. We have the greatest group right over here.
Yes.
I want all of these children and their teachers, because that is my future. Some of them, when I'm old and gray, they're gonna be taking care of me. Because I won't know where I'm at. And so I'm dependent on you people. So thank you for being here.
Well, he's younger than me. I've got the millennials gonna be taking care of me, so I really need a prayer. Yes. Man?
Okay. Let's see, what is it?
Before we do the award, we need to
Yes,
have a guest talk with each other. Hold 1 second. We have the guests, everybody go around and make it.
Okay. Would everybody like to introduce themselves? We can just go around the table. Would that be okay? Will you be bashful?
Hi, my name is Jim. I'm from Waldoboro.
Joyce Hill, Waldoboro.
Wayne Miller from Nobleboro.
And Miller from Waldoboro.
Melvin Williams, Waldoboro.
Carol McDonald, Waldoboro.
Frank Hill, Waldoboro.
I'm Holly Scala. I'm from Claremont, New
Tell us
Hampshire.
about yourself, Holly.
Oh, yes, Holly, we need to hear from you.
Malin Wheeler,
Tell a couple of sentences.
best known as Jeannette's husband.
So I'm from Claremont, New Hampshire. I have recently met Dr. Kishore and become a fan of a lot of his work, and we share a lot of the same philosophies about how to help people with substance use disorders and the families that are affected by that. I have worked in New Hampshire for the last 2 years building recovery community centers so that people can get educated and families can get some support and things of that nature. So that's my, that's been my work for the last 10 years or so, is building communities around recovery efforts and getting people well and getting families well. And so I was invited by Dr. Kishore to come, and I'm just happy to be here.
She'll be speaking in a future event.
Thank you.
Malin?
Malin Wheeler. Jeanette's husband. Best known as.
And Don Myers, New Harbor.
Dr. Kishore?
Steve Schran, a transplant from Massachusetts back in 1974. I live in New Gloucester,
A refugee.
and talk about a small town, there's only 3 friends right in New Gloucester, and that's it.
I'm Kira Hill from the Warren. Jocelyn Hills. Laura Hills. Ardesia. Kadrian. Hadassah. Saito. Sila. Kimani.
Chris.
Trying to know all the girls' names, but we get some good ones.
I wanted to mention Steve Schran he's kind of a sidekick to Charlotte Iserby. I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but she was in the Department of Education under Ronald Reagan, correct?
Yes.
And she's written a pretty famous book now called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America and What's Happening to Our Educational System. And Steve he's kind of escorts her around, and he's very much involved in her work and informing people about the problems in our educational system as well as other things. Charlotte couldn't be here, unfortunately, today, but so glad Steve could be here.
By the way, I was an educator in the state of Maine for 29 years, and I know exactly what's going on. And most of the teachers do too.
Yeah. Okay, and very quickly, we would like to have Kiara come up. Kiara is a very special young lady. She's kind of an entrepreneur, actually. She has started her own newsletter called The Sterling Farm. And it's a wonderful little newspaper. You can get it online for 25 cents a week. And it's wonderful news about happy things happening on the farm and other things too. But anyway, this year we are glad to award her our 2017 Youth Ambassador Award for the National Library of Health and Healing. So there's your award, and here's a little present for you.
Yay!
Okay.
Okay.
What's next? Oh, and then we also have an award. She's not here. She's not really involved with the library, but Dr. Kishore was really taken by a young woman in Waldoboro working at the Subway store. She's like 20 years old, 21 years old. She's buying her own home. She's holding down 2 jobs. And he said she's a model citizen, so we're having a model citizen award that we're giving to her too for the town of Waldoboro. I will be seeing her and giving that to her. So next on the agenda is our guest speaker, Hal Shurtleff from Massachusetts.
Okay.
And we're here to hear Hal today.
All right, before we start formally, I have a basket, made in USA, a Longaberger basket, and we do have some expenses, and I'm sort of, we're all, for the most part, all volunteer. I'm the only one that is on staff, but I exist because of the good folks that help me, keep me on the road. So if you can, help out a little bit, I would greatly appreciate it. I've got 3 more presentations this week. I'm going up to Lincoln tonight, and then Holton, and then up to Presque Isle. And I want to dedicate this presentation to a dear gentleman that passed away in July, Dr. Michael Coffin. Some of us know him pretty well. He helped expose this early on, back in the early 90s, when people were calling it, oh, that's incredible, that can't be happening, that's a conspiracy theory. So he died of cancer after struggling for 2 years. Dr. Kishore and I and Reverend Stevie Kraft had a nice visit with him in November, and we really miss him. I have some good information on the table, and I just want to point out a few things. Gateway 1 is something that maybe some of us in this room are familiar with. Thanks to activists, they informed the governor. I think Jeannette was one of them. And a lot of it was defunded. But I was up here about 3 years ago, and I saw some Gateway 1 newsletter. And I said, oh boy, they're rearing their ugly head again. And I asked Ted Cowan, who originally wrote this article, to update it. Ted lives up in Thomaston. And he updated it, and what we did was we published it in a little booklet format, and we handed these out to every selectman in the towns that affect Gateway 1. That's what we call activism, and I do have some available here, and please, and I also have them in a PDF format. I'll be happy to email you a copy of the PDF, or go to our Scrib page, and you can download it there. Now, Agenda 21, it has a lot to do with climate change. You see the sea level. Have you noticed that the seas, every time there's a high tide, is like 20, 30 feet higher than it was last year? Have you noticed that? No, we haven't. But anyway, we're supposed to have everything, all the poles are going to melt, the seas are going to raise, and we're going to, by the way, the environmentalists, some of them really believe this, that Maine is going to be a refuge from the southern states. So you're going to have thousands, millions of people moving up here in the next 5 to 6 years because of the climate change. Yes, yeah.
We're going to blow the bridge out.
It's like the bumper sticker I saw once. This is "Welcome to Maine. Now go home." Right? The climate change or global warming controversy is nothing new. In 1810, Noah Webster, he's the same guy that wrote the dictionary, wrote a dissertation refuting global warming. It was fascinating that he went to the Old Testament for weather patterns. He also went to the various weather diaries of farmers and his own personal experiences and so forth. And he said, we've had warm winters and we've had cold winters, but there's no trend here. They weren't worried about it, by the way. They thought it was a great thing. What happened was that certain animals were coming up further north that weren't used to that climate. That's called that they adapt. And so there were some people, including Thomas Jefferson, and he was no Al Gore, by the way, that thought that there would be a problem. So we put this in print. And we have that available too. There's plenty of copies there. And a couple of years ago, as actually a friend of mine, Alex Newman, attended the climate change conference in Paris. Thankfully, our president pulled out. Totally unconstitutional. And we have information about that from the various climate scientists. One of the climate scientists, I call him one of the world's top climate realists, was an instructor this year at Camp Constitution, Professor Willie Soon. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see his 2 classes. He's a very, very engaging and funny individual. He's a atmospheric scientist. You think, oh my goodness, I'm already falling asleep, right? Funny guy and very interesting. So please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to it and download his. He's coming back to next year's camp with his family and his mother-in-law. That's how much he liked it. So Agenda 21 to Agenda 2030. What happens is that when certain things get exposed and become controversial, they remarket or rebrand something. In this case, Agenda 21, as people were getting, the word was getting out, and so the powers to be that said, let's change the terminology. This is too controversial. So now it's called Agenda 2030. This is an example, Boston, Greenovate, Boston, Agenda 2030. And it's just, you'll see it in other places too. Imagine Boston 2030. And what they do is they have these little boxes and libraries, and you put down what you want to see in Boston by the year 2030. And one of the goals is to be carbon-free, or like 80% carbon-free. It's totally unrealistic, but we feel very good about it. And it doesn't sound very evil and ominous. So Agenda 21. The thrust of Agenda 21 is to transform traditional individual property rights into collective property rights. That means owned by the government, okay? Agenda 21 is based upon the premise that government planning should replace the Western understanding of private stewardship. Without private property, we wouldn't have much. All things that are created, things that are grown and so forth, are because of private property. Even the product of our mind, you know, the things that we come up with, ideas, private property. And this is a document that you can find online. First Summary, Agenda 21. You can, I think it's a free download. Now, free market versus socialism. I heard a gentleman speak, Lawrence Spivak. He's known as the free market warrior. He said that we need to increase the population of the world to increase wealth. I said, wait a minute now. I thought we had too many people. That caused grinding poverty. Well, just the opposite. Show me a population that's in decline, and I will show you an economy that's in decline. If you don't believe me, go up to Aroostook County, and we'll prove it to you. They've lost a third of their population in the last 40 years. They are not prosperous. Okay? So this is an example here. The Rand Corporation, of all entities, actually published something about that, drawing mainly from interviews of Soviet official papers and press reports. The author documents thoroughly the extensive and depressing environmental degradation of the Soviet Union. Why? Because it was all owned by the government. So when there's state control or federal control of something, you're going to have more environmental devastation. You know, in the Midwest, during the 1800s, they had they went out there and they gave 100 acres and a mule and so forth, the homesteaders. The problem was they didn't give them enough land to sustain a farm. So they had to use the public lands. And that's what created the Dust Bowl. See, so anytime you get government involved, you're going to have problems. Here's another example, the green economy. Congress banned the incandescent light bulb. Incandescent light bulb was a kind of a boon. It would put us, thanks to the great Thomas Edison, right? To replace it with something that is more dangerous, it has mercury filled, filled with neurotoxins. Not so environmental friendly, okay? Then I think about the green economy. I believe that the innovation that we've had in the early 1900s, transportation, the use of coal, you could say coal was a green fuel. What do you mean by that? Well, it's either coal or trees or wood. Also, thanks to the free market, gas. Gas was something they would burn as quickly as they were drilling for oil, they had to get rid of the gas. It was too expensive and dangerous to ship. All of a sudden, someone invents the seamless pipe, and you can ship gas all over the place as a very clean, relatively clean burning fossil fuel. They tried the electric car. You know that in 1904? It's nothing new. but it didn't work. It was just too heavy and not very efficient. And I have no trouble with, maybe they will come up with an electric car that will run for 5 days on a half-hour's charge and be able to go up hills and go 100 miles an hour. That may happen. What's happening, though, is the government is subsidizing that industry. If they subsidize it, they control it. And here's Mr. Gore, who has a lot of financial interest in these companies, right? Like Tesla and Solyndra. So that's something that was, the electric car is nothing new. Here we get to Solyndra. Now, you remember Obama, President Obama, when he ran for office, he said, we're going to have a booming economy, a green economy, going to create all kinds of jobs. They not only did the federal government, but state governments also bankrolled these solar panel companies. Solyndra went out of business. They, you know, even no matter how much they subsidize it. Now, I have no trouble with solar panels. If you want to get off the grid and you buy your own solar panels, that's your right. But think, a lot of these solar panels, they're only good for so many years. They're using rare earth minerals. Most of the stuff's made in China, communist China. And you see you see that field that they're on? That used to be a beautiful field with field mice and all kinds of other critters. Now you've got these, and it also increases the temperature of the area too. That's another factor they don't like to talk about.
Global warming.
That's right, global warming. The green economy celebrating old technology. The wind wheel of the Greek engineer Heron of Alexandria in the 1st century AD is the earliest known instance of using a wind-driven wheel to power a machine. It's not a new invention. It's an old invention. And I think wind turbines, and there may be some practical applications, but not here. They're very costly. Some of these big ones you see, they're only good for a certain amount of time. Anyway, when you put them on top of a mountain, think about this. If you want to build a hiking trail, you probably wouldn't be able to do it. They say, oh no, you're going to cause some environmental devastation. Oh, but I want to put a bunch of wind turbines on the hill, on the top of the mountain. Oh, why did you say so? They've got to clear-cut roads to get up to the top. They've got to have transmission lines clear-cut. They put these big turbines up there. They catch fire on occasions. They catch fire. That's $1.5 million investment going out the window. If it's too windy, they got to shut down. If it's not windy enough, you don't get any energy. It's not a very efficient form of energy, and it's very costly, and it devastates, of course, the birds as well. I like this green economy. I didn't realize it, but my dear late mother was a greenie, because we lived in an apartment, kind of run down at the time, and we had something called a solar dryer, otherwise known as a clothesline. And I think that technology, you don't see, I go to a suburban town like Wellesley, Massachusetts. They're so green and clean with their big homes and two or three vehicles. I don't see one clothesline in Wellesley. You go to an area, a poor area, people have clotheslines. Why? Because electricity is expensive, so they're saving money. Of course, when birds fly over and decide to mess on it, or the mud comes up, so they're not the greatest thing. This is up in Belfast, Maine. The private sector green communities. This is the community of the future. These tiny little 200 square foot units where you're going to be living. But don't worry about it. They have a common living room and a common kitchen. You may have a car, but if you do, you got to park it 2 miles away. See? So they think this is going to be the community of the future. And, if you want to live in one of these things, I don't care. Go right ahead. I don't want it. Seeking a few more families. The old-fashioned village of the future. Yeah. Sorry. So I don't know what happened. I lost the picture. Okay. Free market versus socialism. I'm going to get into the Agenda 21 was a plan that was hatched at the UN. And they had a conference down in Rio de Janeiro in 1992 to introduce it to the world. And so we need to learn a little bit about the parent entity called the United Nations. If you read the UN Charter, how many people have read the UN Charter? Looked at it, maybe, okay. How many people have read the Constitution? And by the way, if you don't have one, please take one. We've all read this. I say to you that the UN Charter and the U.S. Constitution are diametrically opposite each other. They're totally opposite. One limits government, the other one gives unlimited government. One protects rights, the other one gives rights, and then takes those rights when it's necessary. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that's such a farce. It says that you have all these wonderful rights. The right to vacation time. Well, what's wrong with that? The right to travel, the right to religious worship, except if there's a law against it. If you say anything against the UN, you can't under the UN law. Okay. How about the Communist Manifesto? I understand that this is the most popular item in colleges today. You know, it's interesting. You hear about cultural Marxists that want to destroy our history, tear down our statues. Marx was a racist and anti-Semite. Why would they use him as a model? A racist, and yeah, he may have been from a Jewish background. He wrote a book called A World Without Jews. And he, in his manifesto, he said that communism abolishes all eternal truths. Why would we want to even listen to this raving madman, right? Who had nothing but contempt for the average person. He said that black people are, he called people Jews with Negro blood. That was when he really insulted you. That's the kind of guy you're dealing with here. A guy that was a very bad father. One of his daughters died of starvation. You know, didn't get a lot of Father's Day cards. Well, here are some of the 10 planks. I'm going to go over all of them. Plank number 1, and this is essential. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. That is Agenda 21. That's the definition of Agenda 21. Plank 2, a heavy progressive or graduate income tax. Gee, we don't have that, do we? No, right? Abolition of the right of inheritance. We still have that, but boy, anyone with trying to give a house to your loved ones, you're going to have all kinds of inheritance taxes, right? All kinds of obstacles. That's why people set up funds and trust funds and such. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank. Wow. Do we have that? Well, we have the Federal Reserve Bank. So, not quite what he was looking for, but it's pretty close. Here's the UN. I call it the house that Hiss built. You know, the Yankee Stadium was the house that Ruth built. This is the house that Hiss built. Well, who was Hiss? I'll talk about him in a minute. Now, they'll say, oh, the UN, they're just a bunch of idiots. They're useless. They don't do anything. They're a problem. I wish that were the case. This is a map of UN missions. That's not even the whole map. They're monitoring our elections now, by the way. They have college in Tokyo. So what are they doing? You're sitting around throwing balloons out hotel windows? They are doing all kinds of things. And you can read it. You can read all. And by the way, these slides are available to you. I'll be happy to give to you all these different things that they're involved in. They're all bad. Peacekeepers. I'll go into that a little bit. Here's Alger. Who knows who Alger Hiss is? He wrote the UN Charter, or most of it. Collaborated with it. He was a man from an upper middle class background, Columbia University, when a lot of people didn't go to college back in the 20s and early 30s. He was also an agent for Joseph Stalin. He betrayed the greatest country in the history of the world. He became an advisor to Franklin Roosevelt, and he was the acting UN Secretary General at the founding meeting. And he wrote the UN Charter. So no wonder the UN Charter is diametrically opposed to this, because it was written by a communist spy and traitor. Now, we hear a lot about UN peacekeepers, right? Oh boy, UN peacekeepers are going to bring peace to a troubled world. You can go on, just do a search online and put UN peacekeepers and rape, UN peacekeepers and all these robberies and such. You're going to find all kinds of examples of how UN peacekeepers aren't so great. This was more recent. This was in Somalia. Now, I bet you the Portland Press-Herald had this in the front page, right? Back in the mid-90s. You knew it was on the front page, right? Oh, it wasn't? Oh, you better believe it wasn't. Yeah. You see the pigmentation of these two guys? They're whiteys, you know? They're white. Who was the guy they were setting on fire? He was a Somalian national. When I went to basic training, we were told that you can't do this kind of stuff to prisoners of war, to other soldiers that you capture. They didn't get the memo. Or maybe they did get the memo. Maybe that was what they were allowed to do. This man died, by the way. And you didn't see that. This was Gatanga back in the early 60s. The beloved UN troops, white troops killing black people, okay? Mainly from Ireland. They murdered, they pillaged, they raped, they even bombed hospitals. And you didn't ever hear about it. You didn't hear about it in your model UN program at your public school or your private school. You didn't hear about it. You see? Now here is a peacekeeper. I tell you what, if someone puts a gun to my head like that, I'm not the baddest martial arts guy, but you can take that weapon away pretty easily, unless you've got 20 other guns pointing at you. So this is how you bring democracy to a beleaguered nation, the point of a gun. Death by Government, a very important book. It's a horrible book, but it talks about that more people, and by the way, it was written by a liberal, University of Hawaii, back in, I think it was the early 90s. He said, more people are killed by governments in peacetime than are killed during wartime in the 20th century. One of the bloodiest centuries in the history of mankind. And most of the nations that were involved in the genocide were members in good standing at the UN, Communist China, the Soviet Union, which the UN started in 1945. Lords of poverty. This guy pointed out how the UN, the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, actually creates more poverty by their actions and deeds. What they do is they fund the current dictator. The dictator takes the money and spends it lavishly. Ethiopia, as an example, became a communist country. They had UN conferences there while people are dying of starvation. They had this lavish 5-star hotel. People are wasting food. Meanwhile, people a block away are dying of starvation, and there's no care. So getting up to Agenda 21. 1976, a conference was held in Vancouver, British Columbia. All countries should establish as a matter of urgency a national policy on human settlements, embodying the distribution of population over national security, national territory. Such a policy should be devised to facilitate population redistribution and to accord with the availability of resources. And something called the HUD's AFFS, Affordable, I can't remember the acronym. That was a way to get people put in these rural areas around the country. That was Obama's plan. Our Common Future. This came out at a conference in 1987, and a woman by the name of Gro Harlem Brundtland, who was the chairwoman of this group, the World Commission on Environment and Development, and then in 1992, the conference at the Rio de Janeiro conference. I had a friend of mine that was there, Bill Jasper, he was a reporter there. There were delegates from about 170 nations, and Agenda 21 was already being implemented. It just wasn't actually written up and introduced to the world. You can find this on Amazon for a few dollars. By the way, I don't get any commission from Amazon when I promote a book unless I'm selling it on our Amazon account. This is a sort of a short version of the Agenda 21. There are some strategy to save our save our planet. Sorry, my mistake. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. A major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action be integrated into individual and collective decision-making at every level. Other than that, it doesn't have much of an impact. Now let me say this. If you own private property, you have your own business, you always do that. You have to do that. Because the word sustainable is a good word. They corrupted this word too. You can't have a business unless it's sustainable. You're going to go out of business. Your newsletter will become sustainable as more people subscribe to it, more people read it. But if you don't respond to people when they ask you to get a subscription, you're going to go out of business. It won't be sustainable. So you have to do things that are sustainable. How many businesses have been around for generations? They're doing something, like at Moody's, diner. They're doing something right. They're doing something that's sustainable. But so everybody, anyone that owns a business has to do that. Now this is the granddaddy of Agenda 21. He's since deceased. He was living in communist China, which is a good place for him. He was a relatively poor man. He was a passcode clerk at the UN. Within a short time, he was a head of an oil company in Canada. Became a billionaire. See, he got the eye of David Rockefeller. If you want to go somewhere in the world, well, he's now dead too. But he caught his attention. And this is because he worked hard and went to night school, but he had the right coattails. Now, Maurice Strong was at this event. Here's a guy that owned about 40 pieces of property, jet-setted around the world, has a big carbon footprint. But you see, since he's one of the masters of the universe, he's allowed to live that extravagant life. He said this: "Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized civilizations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about?" He also said at the UN conference that the biggest threat to the world, what do you think the biggest threat to the world in this man's feverish mind is?
People.
People, but which ones? The American people. And why? He didn't think it was a proliferation of nuclear with crazy dictators or Muslim terrorists. No, it was the American middle class. How many people fall in that category? Well, would like to, if they're not quite there yet. How many people drove here in a car today or a truck? How many people woke up and put on their AC or their fan today? Right? How many people, if it was January, how many people would go home and put a log on the fireplace or put some coal or burn some oil? Yeah. How many people eat red meat? Oh, come on, fess up. You come on. Yeah, I know. Okay. So that is why you are an enemy of guys like him, because of your consumption patterns. unsustainable according to this socialist, right? And they have to be changed. Jacques Cousteau, most of us remember growing up, well, some of you a little bit older than I am, some of you younger, the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau. I remember watching as a child. They're probably all on YouTube, right? A World War II hero, to his credit. He was a submariner for the French Navy. But something happened along the way. 1991, he is interviewed by a UN arm called UNESCO, United Nations Environment, Science, Cultural Organization. They want it all. They want to control the culture, they want to control the science, the environment, everything. He said, and you can find this, by the way, so don't take my word for it. I actually heard this, I said, I don't believe it. I actually had the hard copy of the document at one time. It's online. One American tires the earth much more than 20 Bangladeshis. World population must be stabilized, and to do that, we must eliminate 350,000 people per day. He said that, folks. For some reason, you didn't read about that when it came out, did you? In your Portland Press Herald, or your Boston Globe, or your NPR. I doubt it. Every now and then, our NPR gets it right. They actually had a good story about what happened in Boston, before the event in Boston. They were one of the few that had the honesty to say these people who organized this rally have nothing to do with neo-Nazis and Klansmen. But nobody else wanted to believe them. No, liberals didn't even believe them. And at the Rio conference, he got a standing ovation. He said this: an American-born child environmentally is too expensive to maintain to his or her adulthood in a world economy. That means a global economy. American women must be subjected to some manner of regulation beyond licensing and mandatory abortion practices. And you didn't hear that either when George W. Bush signed the Rio, the Agenda 21. Didn't hear it. Republicans and Democrats, both parties have been pushing this. It was Richard Nixon that gave us the EPA, right? Daddy Bush, I don't have him in here, Obama, and of course Clinton. Now, George Bush was at the Rio conference and signed, and what makes it the Agenda 21 even more evil, it really wasn't a law, it wasn't a treaty that anyone had a debate like the Senate. It was soft law, and what he said is that we are now going to bring this to the United States and implement it at the federal level as best we can. So he's out of office, he didn't get reelected. Clinton is now. Clinton came up with Sustainable America, and you can find that online as well. That's a free download. And there were 8 goals according to this. Nothing in the Constitution about this document here. One of them was, we must move towards stabilization of the U.S. population and a reduced rate of population growth in the United States and the world. We must also expand the number of curricula materials and training opportunities that teach the principles of sustainable development. So, Common Core is full of this kind of stuff, and I don't see anything in the Constitution that talks about population stabilization. If it's in there, maybe someone can tell me after the presentation here. So, population stabilization means population control. Okay. Cars are not sustainable mode of transportation. America must work diligently to decrease the rates of transportation or emissions of greenhouse gases and other pollutants, including carbon monoxide, lead, nitrogen oxide, small particle matter, sulfur dioxide, and volatile compounds. To help achieve this goal, there must be a major effort to stabilize the number of vehicle miles traveled per person. And that's why they're trying to implement a mileage tax. I think I think a few communities have done that. So they want to tax how many miles you drive. So if they do that, that might say, gee, you know, I want to take a trip up to Arcadia Park or down to Boston, but I can't afford it. The gas is $5 a gallon, and I got to pay 20% tax on every mile, and I have to record my miles to the government? Oh yeah, that's I think George Orwell wrote this thing, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you had the White House Rural Council, Executive Order 13575, and he talks about basically getting people off the rural areas. This is J. Gary Lawrence. This was an advisor to Bill Clinton. He was very much involved with the, even recently. He said this: participating in a UN-advocated planning process would very likely bring out many of the conspiracy-fixated groups. Yeah, who? Anybody we know that fits the description? See, they're conspiring against us, and when people oppose it, we are conspiracy groups, you know. This segment of our society who fear one world government and a UN invasion of the United States, to which our individual freedom would be stripped away, would actively work to defeat any elected official who joined the conspiracy So let's call our processes something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth. So he changed the terms, and they sound innocuous, you see. So he admitted this. He did this, I think he was in Europe, in a group in England, when he said this. So they're telling us to lie to people, because if you don't lie to people, we'll get opposition. This is a map that Dr. Michael Kaufman put together, dealing with the Biodiversity Treaty, which was there was a few other things that came out of Agenda 20, the Rio Conference. The Biodiversity Treaty was basically, they want to shut off a good portion of our country, around the world. But he said, he looked at their policy, he said, this is what it would look like if fully implemented. The red would be core reserves and corridors, little to no human use. Buffer zones between, and then the large population cities, you see the green, will it be, population bases. Look at Maine.
Yeah.
Look at Maine. And what they want to turn that whole Aroostook County, that whole Baxter Park area, Millinocket into a federal park. They already created a national monument. Thankfully, Trump's against it, and your Governor LePage is against it.
Where is New Hampshire in this?
What's that?
Is New Hampshire in this one?
Oh yeah, well you see, the White Mountains, oh yeah. I mean, you don't see much, there's not much left in New Hampshire. I mean, New Hampshire's not as big as Maine, but they got all the White Mountains, which is already a federal park, by the way. And incidentally, the Constitution gives no authority to the Congress. In Article 1, Section 8, they have the right to docks, magazines, forts, and other needful buildings. And when they established a territory, the goal was to turn it into a state as quickly as possible. It wasn't to turn it into, and the federal government owns, in the West, they own about 80 to 90% of the land. Okay, so, ICLEI, I'll go over that a little bit. Local governments, ICLEI sounds like something like a horror movie. We had a thing in Massachusetts called CLRPA and ICLEI. It sounded like a bad Japanese horror movie, right? International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. It was established 2 years before the Rio Conference, and it was founded by the UN. And yeah, I want to point out, this is a good website, cfac.org. It shows that in the last 16 years, this was 2012, that we experienced actually a little bit of global, no global warming, actually leveled off, so there's no global warming. Let's see, these are some of the leaders of ICLEI, none of whom you've ever heard of, and how it's unconstitutional. United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. No state shall enter into a treaty, alliance, or confederation, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power. ICLEI is a government-to-government entity, and you have towns and cities and counties that belong to it. It's about 1,500 members of that around the country. And Maine, I updated the slide. I think I used an older slide, so I have to go by my memory here. You only have about 3 members of ICLEI to our knowledge. So ICLEI used to have all the members on, you go to their website and you can say, oh, go to Maine, good, you're giving us targets. A few towns pulled out. Belfast pulled out, let's see, down, Cumberland I think pulled out, a few towns when they pulled out. That doesn't mean they're no longer promoting the agenda, they just don't belong to ICLEI anymore. But even if you don't belong to it, a lot of the policies they're implementing are still there. So it's hard to discover exactly how many members of in the United States because they changed. International Council for Local Environmental Initiative. It's almost a contradiction, isn't it?
It's a bad word.
And they came out with saying, oh, they'll say it's a conspiracy theory, but okay, well then how can you have local Agenda 21 planning guide? How come they have this thing that you take the planning guide so you can adopt Agenda 21 in your local community? Oh, now it's 2030. How come they're doing that? Okay, I'll just, these are just some of the ICLEI towns. I was giving presentations pretty much all over. I've given over 200 in the Midwest, New England, and so I have some other states. Smart meters, that's one way to keep track of your electricity use. Gee, what happens if you have a big spike, 25% spike in electricity? You may be having a business that's not registered with the state or with the government, you see, right? Oh, this is something else too. Bringing a new world to life. Transition in the United States. So this is another one, an organization. What is a transition town? So these are some of the things you need to check out, to verify. ICLEI in New York, I'll just skip that. A lot of ICLEI members here. This is the Lakes region. This is something that Maine, I think, did belong to, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. I like that word, initiative. You think that people in the local community came up with the idea. This is the cap and trade that Congress never passed. These people will determine, you know, you get a bunch of solar panels, and they give you carbon credits, and then you have a company that, you live in a state that abides by this, so that company has to buy the carbon credits from the guy with the solar panels on the house. So the carbon credits, they plan this will be the medium of exchange in the future. And it's also unconstitutional. I was in, they're headquartered in New York City. I tried to get them, I got them on an email. I was getting some nice, I asked them one simple question. Did Congress ever authorize you to do what you do? They gave me this long, flowery, you know, response. I said, thank you for your response, but you didn't answer my question. Did Congress approve of your regional arrangement? They never got back to me. I was in Manhattan. I tried to visit them, but you can't get into the building, which did look very sustainable, by the way. Air conditioners everywhere. Couldn't get in there without an appointment, and they really didn't want to see me. So, more equally, okay, here, this is an old list. Portland, South Portland, Falmouth, York. Oh, yeah, two left recently, Yarmouth and Belfast. Well, they left about 4 or 5 years ago. So, Agenda 21 in Maine. So now we're more locally, right? Let me see here. Now, I'm going to be up in the county, right? And I was giving a presentation a few years ago, and there's some University of Maine professors there at this Rotary Club. And I said, go to your Kent State, University of Maine, Fort Kent, and see what they're doing. Oh, they didn't. They were very polite, but as soon as the meeting was over, they left. They didn't hang around. They didn't want to talk to me. So, this is HUD, Sustainable Communities Initiative. HUD. HUD is a federal entity created by Franklin Roosevelt, Housing and Urban Development. They are one of the biggest entities that is actually pushing Agenda 21 at the local level. And many times they don't go to the state houses, they go right to the communities, right to the towns. And they don't even go to the town selectmen, they go to the town planners. There may be one person in that town that buys into it and they convince the city council or the town selectmen, sure, we're going to save money, yeah, you just gavel it through, vote it unanimous. They don't know what they've done. They've never heard of Agenda 21, unless we tell them. So, okay, what else we have here? This is this is really interesting. Their mission. Okay, listen to this. They want to have resilient, durable, and prosperous communities. Prosperous communities. When you leave, I said earlier, when your population goes down, you have no prosperity. How is this entity bringing prosperity to Aroostook County? It's not. Okay, so let me go here. Yeah, this is. You'll see these all over the country, okay? This was in New Hampshire, Granite State Future. You go in there, they have a little silly little cards, and they say, would you like to see more trees, more green space, you know, fill it out, and yeah. I usually put down, I need to see more manufacturing, I want to see better jobs, and to get Ickley out of your town, right?
Thank you.
I have a little fun with this. I usually sometimes stick a constitution in these things too. I have a lot of fun. And I did a couple of little videos on there. This is just a PR campaign to think that you have some input in this. You don't. You have none. And I'll just skip all this. Plan New Hampshire is one of the entities in New Hampshire. This is I want to talk about a very important success story. I was in the town of Ringe, which is a little where our camp used to be held in the southwest county. It's a 5,000 population, 50 square miles, good-sized town. It goes back to the colonial era. I was in the town hall to drop off a few pamphlets on Agenda 21, and I found this thing called a charrette. It used to be called a visionary session, but visionary session became controversial. So they changed it the word to charrette. Boy, that sounds like a couple of French guys with a beret and a glass of wine and cheese, right? Sounds pretty cool. That's not what it is. It's actually a visionary session, how to bring Agenda 21 into your town. So I went home, wrote a letter to the editor, which is an important vehicle, by the way. I don't think the local paper ran it, but I posted the information onto the Town of Ringe Facebook page. They've since changed the policy. Outsiders can't post anymore. You have to be an administrator. Within a couple of days, some of the progressive freethinkers in town viciously vilified me. I thought, great. They're paying attention. That's what I want, because then the good people in town, the people that earn a living and pay taxes, they said, we don't like these people that are coming after you. There's got to be something here. In a short time, one of the guys approached me, and he said, Hal, I need to know about this. And he spent 2 months really immersing himself totally in this thing. They held a meeting at my suggestion in October of 2012. They had over 200 people. This is a small town. They set up a plan of action. They did mailings. They had a couple of people donate money to mail to the whole. You can mail within a town pretty inexpensively. I don't know what it cost, but it was pretty cheap. Uh-oh. I don't think we want to hear Lillian Nordica right now, do we? Okay. They had, on the warrant articles, they're like petition, ballot questions like they have on, they call them warrant articles in New Hampshire, I don't know if they call them here or not. And one of them was to get the charrette off the master plan. Another one was anytime HUD money comes in, because HUD pumped in about $50,000. Anytime HUD money comes in, there has to be a general vote. Okay, oh, they didn't like that. And there was a third thing, I can't remember what it was. They were all defeated by like an 80-20 margin. I mean, it was kicked out on its keister. Bingo. After 3 or 4 years of all this groundwork the progressive free thinkers in town were doing, they kicked it out. They got rid of the solar panel project, and they replaced the town manager. The town manager resigned, and they got a couple of selectmen that are pro-liberty now. And now they have an organization that keeps their eye on this. It's called Save Our Town. That's what every town should have. And it's not just on this issue, but tax issues and other issues too. Yeah, smart growth area. A smart growth area, let's say Waldoboro, okay? They'll look at maybe intersections of a couple of hot roads, Route 1, another intersection, and this is where they'll allow stack them and pack them. If you had a commuter rail, if you had an Amtrak station stopping here or a commuter rail, but you don't have that. But Route 1 would be your corridor. So you can build anything you want there, but you go, maybe a half a mile from there, they'll have this area where you have very little growth, You'll have really strict regulations. And you've seen this in Massachusetts. You have a vernal pool, and you can't put anything without a buffer. You can't build anything. You can't build that, put in that in-ground pool. So you lose your property rights. And these people, most of them are probably well-intentioned people that think they have something to do with this gathering, they don't. Okay, what we have here, U.S. Department of... Yeah, well, this is Sustainable Communities Initiative application for New Hampshire region. And it comes out of HUD. And it goes to a regional, see, you have regional planning commissions here in Maine, they're part of the problem. Like you had this thing called Gateway 1, right? Getting federal money, state money, they're not getting it anymore, but they were getting it to implement something in your worst interest. And most people don't even know. If you went outside, ask the average person, ever had Gateway 1? Know what you're talking about. Yeah, this is I'll just skip some of this. So I recommend, go to your town's website. That might be a key of what's happening. Sometimes they have, this is City of Keene, sustainability right there, right? Sustainability. They belong to ICLEI. They're promoting Agenda 21 policies. Environmental Preferable Purchase Program. Believe that, huh? City departments to consider products that have lesser or reduced effect on human health and the environment when compared to competing products. So they'll buy electric cars, which they can't afford, because they like to have the armored cars too, or the tanks. They have a couple of tanks in Keene. Not exactly necessary, and they do a lot of propaganda with young people. Now, again, I think stewardship is very important. I like to see green. I don't think anybody here likes to see dirty water and destroyed land. But they propagandize. They scare these children to death. There'll be no trees left. I was in a print shop near my home, and they had a thing about sustainable forest. And in this thing it said, there are 90% more trees. No, I think this said 20 or 30% in the last 10 years. If you lived up here 100 years ago, this would be clear cut. Right? If you lived in New Hampshire, where near our camp, you could see the top of the mountain because there wasn't any trees from where you were. But what happened? Innovation led to wonderful inventions, so we don't need as much wood. Okay? So the trees grow back. That's what they do. Trees do grow back. And their goal is a climate change. And of course, they buy into this climate change. I had an interesting thing about the sea level rising. They have a drought in California. They're not allowed to build new dams. This is what happens when you have drought. You build a dam, you store the water. Governor Brown doesn't want that. They can take seawater for a penny a gallon and make it drinkable or usable, potable, right? So I would thought, gee, if the sea level rising is true, all we had to do was just convert that saltwater, freshwater pipe into Arizona, and everybody's happy, right? Oh, that's thinking, right? But there isn't any sea level rising. So don't worry about it. If you live on the top of a hill here, you won't have beachfront property anytime soon, right? Our friend Willie Sooney's got a great sense of humor. He signs his stuff. He's the president of the state of Kansas Sea Level Rising Committee. Okay. So I'm just skipping over this because, hey, this is something I think is pretty funny. Now, this was a study that in this Agenda 21 toolkit, education, promise, and paradox. Generally, more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. So, isn't it interesting? They actually had to spend time to the study. I mean, you didn't have to tell me that someone that lives in the housing projects, or someone lives in Wellesley, Massachusetts, at Dover, or South Portland, for example, they burn a little more fuel, fossil fuel. So what's the goal? How do you solve this? Dumb us down, right? Destroy our income. All lower middle class, no middle class. I don't know what happened to my pictures, but the Department of Education is pushing this stuff. And I'll just go over here. Yeah, this was the town of Chelmsford. This was their motto. They had militias that answered the alarm. Let the children guard what the sires have won. Chelmsford, Massachusetts. I spoke in Chelmsford and I said, you people have let your town down. These people would be ashamed that you brought Igley into town. You don't even know it's here. You let your guard down. Let me just keep flashing. Yeah. This was evidence. The town of Dedham is right next to Boston. And it's a nice community. It's got some lower middle class, but mostly upper middle class. And they got this big check was on display. It was from the, when they joined, they became a member of Green Communities, which is another Agenda 21 thing. They got a lot of money. Where did that money come from? It didn't come from the governor. It came from the taxpayers. So they're actually bribing the taxpayers, bribing the town officials to buy into this with other people's money. Now, bribery is a bad thing, but usually somebody says, look to the official, look the other way, but don't worry about my electricity box, and I'll give you $100. You're good, we'll pass you. But now they're bribing people with our money, okay? And the town of Dedham is not pristine and pure. For the most part, we found a really highly polluted area on the oldest canal in the country. And what did Free Market Liberty people do? We organized a cleanup. You know how many greenies came out to help us? None. But we got to clean up. We got bags and bags of trash. Newburyport, Massachusetts, same thing. Greenfield, Massachusetts, same thing. And on and on. So I'll just sort of skip that a little bit. Kingston goes green. And not only that, but the towns are soliciting membership in the Nature Conservancy, which is one of the non-government organizations, UN approved, that's advancing this. They're gobbling up land all over the country. Can you imagine if Kingston said join the NRA, or support Camp Constitution, or support the National Library of Health and Healing? That wouldn't happen, but you can join the Nature Conservancy, not a problem. Wellesley, Massachusetts, another green community, with people with huge homes that are so terribly green. I found this in Maine at the State House. The three little circles together, that's the environmental swastika, okay? I said that in an event. Somebody from the southern part of Boston didn't like that. He got really upset when I said that. Prepared for the Maine Economic Growth Council. Now, so the state of Maine, this was about 4 or 5 years ago. And you picked it up right at the Maine State House. So they're implementing Agenda 21. And they're pushing this smart growth mobility project. That's where you see the little map here. And guess what? The Sierra Club is down here, another NGO. What's that got to do with the state of Maine? Why is the state of Maine involved with Sierra Club? Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Okay, so this is Stack 'em and Pack 'em housing, the wave of the future. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got 5 acres. Normally the town says you can have so many units per acre or what have you. But when they create a smart growth area, they do away with that. They have intense housing. Sometimes there's little real retail units down on the top, on the bottom floor. They're called green buildings, which means they're made cheaply, and they're buildings that you can't get air inside, so they become very sick buildings. A green building is a sick building, for the most part. And they'll build these around commuter rail stations, and they created brand new communities. They're not really communities because there's no sense of community in some of these places. You hop on the commuter rail to go to work, you go back, you get your dry cleaner here, you get your grocery store here, you get your little restaurant with your live music on Friday nights. You have no sense of community whatsoever. You don't even know your own neighbors. That's the wave of I won't get into benefit corporations, that's a little much here. Sustainable Rhode Island, even the post office pushing Agenda 21. They're using the Disney character. Who? What is that? What's the name of that elephant?
Dumbo.
Willie? Oh, I don't know. No, it's not Dumbo.
I'm dating
No,
myself.
I bought an Amtrak ticket. Now I have a friend who's a conductor. I can get a free ride to New York City. So I thought I was saving the planet when I took the Amtrak instead of driving down. And as soon as I paid for my ticket, this thing popped up. Curbing carbon with carbon offsets. Offset your rail travel carbon footprint today. Wow. I feel so guilty that I took a train that burns fuel. So I had to make a donation. Now, what if I said, wait a minute now, I am taking a subsidized, federally owned entity, so I have a socialist footprint, and I need to offset that socialist footprint by supporting free market groups. And up pops, join, give money to some free market group, the Heartland Institute, or Camp Constitution. No, give it to some liberal environmental group, you see. The federal government's doing this. Now, I don't know if it's still going on. I haven't bought a ticket in a few years, but it probably is. I don't know what happened to my pictures here. Sustainable agriculture. Now, there's some farmers here, right? There's some farmers here that have been here their family's been here for generations. You're doing something right, because you're still growing food, or cutting timber, or maple syrup, or harvesting lobsters, or what have you. Sustainable agriculture will destroy, their definition of it, will destroy your ability to raise food. Land trust and NGO, another problem. Nature Conservancy. By the way, this guy is the CEO. He happens to be a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he's with Goldman Sachs. See, the Nature Conservancy, you think they're really not tied to the federal government? Goldman Sachs, and by the way, Goldman Sachs would have been the entity that sold the carbon credits had Congress passed that. See. Now, here's the Nature Conservancy. Empower women. Wait a minute now. You know those little cartoon pictures, what doesn't belong here? And it'd show like farm animals and a giraffe, you had a circle. Remember some of those as we were kids? They probably still do it. So empower women, restore nature, protect water. Which one of those doesn't belong there if you're Nature Conservancy? Empower women. Now, why would they want to empower women? Now, I've got 4 daughters and a wife. I love women. I don't want to see them weak. I don't want to, in weak women, well, maybe they want women not to get married and have children. Have abortions. Isn't that what that's about? Because Agenda 21's main goal is population reduction. Okay? I'll go over it. Look, there's so many land trusts, I couldn't even see it. There's hundreds of land trusts in Maine. And some of them are okay. Some of them are privately owned land trusts, but some of them aren't. And when you put your property to a land trust, you better be careful, because you may not have any use of that property anymore. You just lost that property. Okay? Okay, now I'm coming to a close. Agenda 21 in action. Unelected regional planning commissions. Proposed mileage tax. Smart meters. Trash police. Yes. Flush tax. Can you believe that? They're proposing every time you flush the toilet, right? So that means you probably will have to have go back to the outhouses, right? Green codes. Roads closed. There's an example of a road closed in Massachusetts. Lady didn't get the memo. It was snowstorm. She got stuck. She ended up dying. Okay. There might be other examples of it happening. Idle laws and ordinances. In some places you can't idle for more than in your car. There's a lot of people that idle all the time. I guess they can't make a law against that. These are called vagrancy, right? You couldn't hang around. Idle laws. Towns. I know some towns in Massachusetts, in Maine, you can't idle more than 5 minutes. Well, you start your car up in the wintertime. Sometimes it takes a few minutes to sometimes you don't want to shut up. These big old tractor trailers, you don't shut that thing down. You got to keep that going. Okay. How about your manufacturing base? Where's that? It's gone. Why is it gone? It's no longer profitable to make things because of the regulations that you have. Property tax increase. What happens when the manufacturing base goes? The property rates have to go up because the towns need the money. Lack of local, state, or federal sovereignty. Public and private schools promoting Agenda 21. Propagandizing. Bottled water ban? Yeah. They banned the sale of bottled water in Concord, Massachusetts. Why is that? I remember back in the 70s, getting bottled water was in vogue. You were, a health, spring water, you were into health. I mean, look at Poland Spring. I mean, if Poland Spring is buying into this stuff. They have these sustainable, they have a bottle that say, oh, we're using sustainable plastic and all that. They're not put them out of business. Just like the Judas goat, the Judas goat will bring all the other goats to be slaughtered. They're the last one slaughtered. They should be using their resources to fight this stuff, not to collaborate with it. Plastic bags, they're evil too, by the way. Plastic bags, oh yeah, they're evil. You know what, plastic bag, when you go to the supermarket, you buy 3 items, they put them in a plastic bag. The cost of that is all built into the cost of that product. They're not losing money. It's a part of doing business. Just like the electricity, having the refrigeration and plowing the parking lot in the wintertime. That's all part of the cost of doing business. But I take that plastic bag and I use it for a trash bag in our bathroom. My wife does daycare. She uses that for the diapers. So we recycle. It makes much sense. So don't ban the plastic bags. How about a permit bank? You know what? Anybody in the fishing industry here? I didn't know what this was. I was up in Rockland, Maine. It was a storefront. It was the it was a environmental organization. What was the name of it? Anyway, I can't. But they said permit. I went in there, got some information. They're very nice to me. And they said, we're establishing permit banks. I said, what in the world is a permit bank? So I asked a few fishermen friends of mine. They didn't know what it was. They're buying the fishing permits, you know, for the ground fish, the cod, and you know, you have to get permits. They're going to control fish. And you think they're going to sell a permit to you? No. Yeah, permit banks. Higher food prices due to the ethanol. So you have, mostly in the Midwest, you know, the cornfields here, most of that corn is used for local consumption, right? So you get a farm, and I met some farmers out in the Midwest who said that because the government will guarantee a certain price for corn, they're chopping down trees to plant more corn. That's not sustainable. And the corn is used for oil or for gasoline. And it costs more to convert that stuff. It's totally unfeasible, okay? And because of that, there's less corn to eat, and therefore the price of food goes up. And who's hardest hit by the price of rising food prices? Not the wealthy, but the poor people, right? HUD-funded projects, see, HUD will come in, say you get private developers, and they say, well, here's a parcel of land, and we want to put 20 units, and it's going to cost us $20 million, and the businessman says, look, doesn't look very good to me. Oh, but HUD is going to guarantee 20 to 30% of occupancy. Oh, why didn't you say so? Bingo. The federal government now is into the marketplace, and it upset that whole marketplace. So what they're doing is they're creating artificial demands, okay? And money that would not be invested where it should be invested is invested in something that HUD's taking care of. Rezoning of towns forced to reduce their carbon footprint. Common Core is another thing they're pushing this, and it's like this, Common Core Agenda 21. You know, you have to have this miseducated, dumbed down workforce. And I know Charlotte Isabel has done an incredible job telling about that. Now here's some success stories, so it's not all doom and gloom. Number of towns, cities, and counties have left ICLEI. Smart made a decision in Maine. You had this was about 4 years ago. They don't have to be put into Maine. Bills and or resolutions in numerous states around the country going against Agenda 21. Gateway 1 was defeated in Maine. It did rear its ugly head again, and I tried to find some information just a few days ago. I couldn't see anything online about it, but they might have just called it something else. Maybe it's called Gateway 2. Who the heck knows? But the term gateway is one of their buzzwords too. So if you see that, I mean the gateway to the west, you know, the Golden Arch. That's not Agenda 21. But if you see that in your town, you know, start doing a little search. Alabama banned ICLEI from the state. Plymouth County, Washington, and all these different towns have got out of ICLEI. In some cases, not only did they get out of ICLEI, but they kicked out the Agenda 21 program. So what can you do? Carver, Massachusetts was an interesting example. A member of ICLEI, my ancestors actually settled the town, and there's a Shurtleff Park in the town that was donated by two Shurtleff doctor, relative of my ancestor of mine. Some liberal in town kind of went after me and said, oh, I'm an outsider and I'm evil and the Koch brothers are behind me. I wish, you know. Anyway, I said, you keep it up, I'm going to take my park back. I'm going to turn my park into a tire recycling plant. You know? Had a little fun with that, right? Visit your town hall, city halls, and state hall. How many people visited your town hall other than paying a ticket? How about making an appointment with your selectman or a town planning manager, right? How many people visit your state reps or even know who they are? That's good. It means you're activists, right? Because you see, the state reps, I don't care what party they belong to or how nice they are, how many babies they kiss, they may be working in your worst interest. And they just say, hey, look, the party says we should support it. I don't know anything about this. The more people that go to them, the more they're going to start listening. You're going to influence them, okay? Visit the editor of the local newspaper. Oh, we tried that, didn't we, Doc? But that's okay. Even negative press, because lots of people read between the lines. People who agree with us, that a lot of people say, no one agrees with me, everyone thinks differently, because they're not circulating. And then they see, hey, there's a group in town that's doing something. And then they come and support you. And we had that all the time. Host a meeting like this in your area. Host a video series presentation. Spread our videos and articles on cyberspace. Facebook and social media sites. Choose Freedom, Stop Agenda 21. I'm involved in one called Stop Agenda 21, Stop the ICLEI. Get involved. There's groups like the American Policy Center, headed by Tom DeWeese. He does phenomenal work. Now, Michael Kaufman's deceased, but his website is Sovereignty International. He's got all kinds of great resources. Visit our website. We've got resources on there. Our YouTube channel has some great programs. This was our friend Jim Blyer a few years ago. We did some outreach. We had about 15 people, and Wayne's passed away. Wayne was a great guy, great patriot. He lived in Warren. And we had a sign, "Take Ickley out of town." It was interesting. This was Belfast, right? Now, we went to Ickley's website that said they're a member in good standing. We get there, and we didn't chant, and we didn't have black outfits with veils, with scarves and bats hurting people. It was an educational outreach. And we let the media know. There was a reporter from the Portland Press Herald and a couple of local papers, and they said that Ickley was left about 8 months ago. So they said, we're about a year too late. I said, no, we weren't a year too late. You reported a year too late. You never reported when your town joined Ickley, and because Ickley doesn't like to change their websites, they said we had no knowledge of this, but we raised the visibility here. And you not only didn't do that, but you didn't let people know when it came in and what it was about. The media failed. The dogs that didn't bark, and that's what you're supposed to do. Even if you liked Ickley, you should let people know about it, right? So that was a lot of fun. And what we did, before that, I was heading up to northern Maine and going through Belfast, and I take this sign to my van, and I was with my son, and we put right in front of City Hall, and then we kind of walked away, walked around, and I had my friend Sheila Harshman call, and she said, "What's this Ickley stuff about? I'm thinking about relocating here. I'm very concerned." So we're across the street in a little restaurant, and I see the city officials coming taking pictures and looking around. You got to have fun when you're doing this, We were down in Connecticut with a sign in New London, I think it was, and we're at a busy intersection. Some lady came out, "Who is this Ickley guy? I don't like him. I think we should kick him out, I think, well, there might be somebody named Ickley, I don't know, some Italian fellow, but that's not what, we're talking about something else. That's a lot worse than that guy who's causing trouble. She thought Ickley was someone in town that was a troublemaker. Yeah, this was at a parade. Oh, we had a lot of fun here. Right behind me, right behind us was the Agenda 20, a big old truck, carbon footprint. And we were getting stuff out. I had my children with me, and we had a lot of fun. And this guy was this is actually a cutout of a real person. It's a friend of mine, Uncle Sam. He wasn't available for the parade, so we had to put him in the cutout. Yeah, this is us in Connecticut. And so that's the presentation. I think that every town, it's somehow in every town to some extent, and it's really our job to be alert and be good stewards. So the other thing too is support Camp Constitution, because the support we get keeps me in the field. We keeps this doctor in the field because he doesn't just come here. We've had him in here. We've had him, and when his documentary comes out, we hope to do a debut all over Maine, all over the country. And you can support us if you go to our our website. You'll see a thing that will say PayPal donation. You can make a donation on a monthly basis. Some people are doing $5, $10 a month. $5 a month is 2 cups of coffee. And if you get 100, 200 people doing that, and some people doing 10, and some people, we can not just get me. We have a speakers bureau, and we're having a lot. We're getting a lot of success with it. I don't have time to go into all that, but please help us out. And if there's any questions, if not, we can eat the rest of the food. And I'm heading up to Lincoln to do another presentation. And again, thank you for coming out, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
I think you heard the presentation here. Holly came from New Hampshire and I'm from Massachusetts. Both of us are specialists in addiction. But all of this ties together into this bigger picture. Addiction is one way to depopulate communities. We met with the state representatives in New Hampshire. Was it last year? Last year,
In Maine. In New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
Yes. Yeah.
And they were telling us the depopulation is devastating their communities. They're all becoming state parks, some of the tracts of land. Mm-hmm. And it is first time my eyes opened up. It's not just addiction, there's a bigger picture here.
Yeah, the state rep showed a map, and he said if this particular project goes through, this is going to be left of private property in the state, and it was not a whole lot of the state. Yeah.
So this is what's happening. I think we were battling the addiction from the ground up. We're in the grassroots. taking people, hauling them out, or to the murky waters of addiction, keeping them safe. But if we don't tackle it in a bigger picture, we can do it for the rest of our life.
That's right.
There'll be more than enough problems to solve, but we won't get anywhere. In addiction, they call it making a lot of tracks in the sand, but not getting anywhere. So that's where we are at with the addiction business. So we've got to take a bigger picture here. We got the young people here. What's the present you got, Miss Kira? Did you open your present?
No,
Can you open it?
Round trip to Hawaii, right? All the best. His mom said that, you know?
She's a great newspaper editor. I love her Friday newspaper that comes out every Friday. And I know some of you have given your email addresses. We'll send you a sample copy so you can take a look.
Yeah, we do have a sign-in sheet. It was outside. Is that it right here?
Yeah.
So if you haven't already given us your email, contact information, we'd love to have you do that. And that way there we can stay in touch with them when we do have programs and events. What is it? A stethoscope.
Yeah.
Ah, looks like someone's going to have to be a doctor.
She
huh?
loves life and both animals and humans, so I think she'll keep a good eye on people.
And by the way, if you want to send us a link to your newsletter, we'll put it on the Camp Constitution website. How's that? We'll get international notoriety. Well, thank you, and God bless you. And yeah, one of the things I should have said, in addition to all these things you can do, pray. That should be first. You know, pray that God will rise up men and women and young people to the next generation. Some of us are getting a little old, and we made our generation did a poor job of passing the baton. We kind of dropped it. We got to pick it up, because I think the next generation will be the critical generation, whether we be living in a free country or be living in a third world country. Yeah.
I think there's a lot at stake, and I think Jim has done a great job of filming these events. Some of them are available on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll send you links to all of these so that you can, see what's happening, and we'll keep in touch. I think we have got a big conference planned for late October, November. We just met with some people in the governor's office, and most likely we'll have the governor here, and it'll be a beautiful conference about addiction. But we're calling it de-addiction, getting people addiction out of the bodies and brains and the communities, and not festering communities with the methadone, Suboxone, and other drugs. So we have big plans for this place. We're doing it twice a month, right? I think we got a lot of small groups that are there. The Maine Moms, we got the Constitutionalists of Maine,